There are now 2 lawsuits that Palestinian Americans have filed. One is against the State Department, and the other is against U.S. Congress members. I kid you not. And when I say open your eyes, because that's the theme tonight for the stories, I want you, when you hear this, I want all like different groups, marginalized groups, etc. I want you to start thinking about how we can look at what they did and use it for the things that we feel, we could use it for. So, for example, Nico House brought this up when I had the reparations panel. If we want to fight back for reparations, which is a debt that is owed for those of us that are American descendants of slavery, Nico said on that panel, we need to file a suit. For indigenous people, if indigenous people who want to fight back, who want land back, who want what is owed to them, maybe the way that we've been going about this maybe hasn't been the best way. Maybe we should be filing lawsuits. That's all I'm saying. Maybe we should be filing some suits. We're going to get into the first one. Palestinian American explains why he is suing the State Department over the U.S. support for Israel. And honestly, I think this is where part of the blame goes. Listen to this, folks.
Joining me now is one of the Palestinian American plaintiffs in this new lawsuit against the Secretary of State, Ahmed Moore. He's a fellow at the Foundation for Middle East Peace. We're also joined by Sarah Lee Whitson, the executive director of Dawn, a human rights NGO supporting this lawsuit. It's great to have both of you with us. So Ahmed, tell us a little bit, first of all, before we get into the details of it, how's your family doing and what prompted this case? What prompted you to be involved in this case?
So it's a daily struggle for survival in Gaza, as you've reported, as others have reported, as I've reported. The fact of getting up every day and just securing clean water to drink, somewhere safe to sleep, food which is edible, is a struggle which defies the imagination. And that's been true for about 14 months now. When the genocide began, I and many other people in the country who were affected began to reach out to our congressional representatives to seek some kind of relief. And that was a dead end, frankly. This lawsuit is designed, hopefully, to get the people who are able to make decisions on these matters to comply with U.S. law. And that means practically ending military aid to Israeli units which are involved in human rights abuses. Practically 14 months into a genocide, I would be surprised if that didn't mean most of the Israeli units which are operating in Gaza.
Sarah, and I want to be clear here, this is not about the U.S. violating international. This is about the United States violating our own laws that are on our own books, so to speak, right? Including specifically the Leahy Law. Explain to us how and what the United States is doing is in violation of the Leahy Law.
Sure. The Leahy Law effectively requires the State Department to vet all Israeli security forces and to ascertain whether any of them have committed gross violations of human rights and to ensure that U.S. military assistance does not go to such units. The United States has never once identified a single Israeli unit as responsible for unremediated human rights violations. It has never blocked assistance to one single Israeli military unit since passage of the law in 1997, since even when the law was amended in 2019, specifically because the law had not been applied to Israel and a few other countries where the aid is supposedly untraceable. And even despite the amendment to the law, the State Department has never once identified a single Israeli unit as ineligible for U.S. assistance.
Pause right there. The Leahy Law, this is the missing piece, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm so proud of them for doing this because, look, the protests were amazing. We protest all over the world. Kudos to everybody that got out in the streets, or if you weren't able to protest, those of you that stood in solidarity, at home or where you were. At the end of the day, though, the Leahy Law is the missing piece. The Leahy Law says that the United States government cannot continue to fund a country that is purposely not allowing aid to get into the people at a time of war. So the civilians that are starving in Gaza because Israel was blocking the aid from getting in, and not just food. We're talking about medicine, diapers for babies. I just saw a story the other day that said that there were babies that died from hypothermia because of the cold environment. The people that are in the tents right now. At the end of the day, the U.S. government is very much responsible. And there are laws here that we do have on the books that we could have been using all along. I think what was happening throughout the Muslim community is some of them were trying to get Kamala Harris or Biden to do the right thing first. Obviously, that didn't happen. And Donald Trump would have done the same thing. And I think if Kamala would have won, we would still see people starving in Gaza. I mean, the reality is these politicians belong to the Israeli lobby, and they have made that very clear. There may be a couple in Congress that are willing to be vocal about it, but the parties belong to AIPAC and J Street, et cetera. So this piece right here, this is the right thing to do. So when I say open your eyes, look at the next step that they took, and we can learn from this. And I know sometimes people say, well, we keep hearing about Gaza. We keep hearing about Gaza. I get it. I understand. I try to talk about a lot of different topics on the show, but this particular issue right here is something that we can learn from. They saw that their people have been killed. Israel starving the people, and the U.S. government gave them the tools to do this. So they decided to take the next step and to file a lawsuit against the State Department, which I can only commend that. That's what they should do. So we are seeing another step. File the lawsuit for not upholding the Leahy Law. You guys know that Congress just passed a bill to protect Netanyahu from the ICC. They just filed a bill. The very first piece of legislation for 2025 was not for the American people. It was not for health care, which we need in this country. It was to protect Benjamin Netanyahu, who doesn't even live in this country. They decided to put sanctions on the ICC. This was a bipartisan effort. So they are already showing you what matters the most to them. It's not us. Netanyahu's more important to them than we are. Last time I checked, I believe it was 47 Democrats that supported it along with this. Come on. So this is the next step that should be taken. The first lawsuit against the State Department.
Despite the overwhelming evidence, including in the State Department's own annual human rights reports of hundreds and thousands of cases of gross violations of human rights.
Tell us about the case that is being built right now with the evidence that you've been able to gather, because, you know, on the outside of it, you have these reports, these Amnesty International reports, the Human Rights Watch reports, Doctors Without Borders saying there's clear signs that ethnic cleansing is being committed. You've got ICC, ICJ, all of these things that the world is seeing and is being documented, in some cases really supported with evidence that has been gathered in the public domain, and yet somehow our own government, our own State Department, our own Department of Defense, which has much more robust capabilities of tracking this information, is somehow ambivalent. So whenever you ask the State Department about it, you get a response that's, well, we haven't come to any conclusions yet, we haven't made any determinations yet, and here we are 14 months into this, and still no clarity, no insight from the government. What do you have that would perhaps change their calculation?
Well, yeah, I mean, the assertion of the State Department that effectively not one single unit of the Israeli security forces has committed a single gross human rights violation that qualifies to ban them from receiving U.S. assistance is so preposterous in the face of the evidence that really we don't need to do much more other than show that they have failed to ever hold one single unit ineligible for aid. But we also have members of the State Department, former officials of the State Department, whose job it was to oversee implementation of the Leahy Law, including with respect to Israel. And they are now part of our lawsuit. They are part of our efforts to say, no, in fact, the State Department deliberately built a system, a bureaucracy designed to avoid ever finding a single military unit ineligible for aid if it's an Israeli military unit.
So the State Department, that would include people like Matt Miller. Like, remember, he is one of the chosen ones to speak at these press conferences. We see him a lot. Like, that would include all these people that I've shown you over the past year that give these BS reasons as to why they're allowing Israel to do what it's doing. So that would include them as well. And they should be in that lawsuit. They have knowingly lied to us, not just to the Palestinian people. They've lied to all of us. These people have known since day one what Israel's goal was, and they participated in it because they supported it. And they support it because they believe that Israel is important to the interests of the United States. That also includes resources that are along the Gaza Strip. Don't forget about that as well. But also because we have a very powerful lobby in this country called AIPAC that has been recruiting people since high school, recruiting people when they're in high school to be a part of the Congress that is going to pass legislation in their favor. Now, how many of you are sitting at home wishing, well, I wish someone would have recruited members of Congress to pass healthcare legislation in our favor to give everybody healthcare? But those people have been recruited by Blue Cross Blue Shields, Aetna, and of course, United Healthcare. Should I say more? So that's what a big part of this problem is. So the Leahy Law has been the missing piece. All of this stuff that we've done up until then, not saying it's not important, and I'm not saying that it didn't matter, but at the end, you have to hold the State Department criminally. Now, sorry, I put my thing here. Criminally responsible. You got to do that. I don't know where else to go from there. You got to do it. So if you're watching, again, if you're indigenous, American descendants of slavery, maybe this is the way to go. Maybe we need to file some lawsuits. And if lawsuits have already been filed, maybe we need to pull people together and file one on the national level. Maybe this is what we need to do. Now we go to the second lawsuit, and this one is very recent. They are also suing Congress members. Ta-da! Get a load of this one. We have to act. Taxpayers suing Congress members for funding the genocide. Speak out. This is the right idea, folks. So we're going to see here. This was announced January 3rd. So let's go on. So we see it says House of Representatives who don't really represent us, right? On December 19th, more than 500 federal taxpayers from 10 Northern California counties filed an unprecedented class action lawsuit against their congressional representatives, Seth Donnelly, Mike Thompson, and Jared Huffman, charges that the defendants, two Democratic Congress members, illegally abused their tax and spend authority on April 20th, 2024, when they voted for the Israel Security Supplemental Appropriations Act, which authorized $26.38 billion in military aid to Israel. Look at this, guys. Abuse their tax and spend authority. We can apply this to other situations, right? You could apply this to the war in Ukraine. Not just Gaza. It's our money. Did we authorize them? Did we authorize them to take our taxpayer dollars and do this? Ukraine. Biden just gave a couple more billion to Israel at the end of 2024. This is genius. This makes sense. It goes on to say the lawsuit filed in the U.S. District Court, Northern District of California. It alleges that Thompson and Huffman violated the U.S. Constitution, the Genocide Convention, and several, this is the key part here, U.S. laws. So these laws are in place, but we're not using them. So again, open your eyes, folks. We have laws right here on the books in the United States. A lot of people just don't know about them. So they got together as a community and they decided to do some research and say, are there any laws here that we can use in our favor? And there are. Why do we have the laws on the books if nobody is going to use them? We have to use what is right in front of us. I'm a Palestinian Lebanese American, and I am suing my California Congressman, Mike Thompson, for misusing my federal tax dollars and supporting the genocide in Gaza. Maria Barakat, a class representative, told Truth Out. As a Palestinian and a person of conscience, Thompson has forced me to be complicit in the murder and genocide of my own people. What did she say that is incorrect? It's our money. So the class action lawsuit, it makes sense. Taxpayers who brought the suit come from a wide variety of backgrounds. They include young people, the elderly, educators, healthcare workers, Jewish and Palestinian Americans, and others. Members of the class are defined as all persons who were federal taxpayers during the year of 2024 who reside within the federal 2nd or 4th Congressional District of California and have suffered moral and emotional psychic injury from being made complicit in the ongoing genocide in Gaza. All persons, guys. So if you paid federal taxes during the year of 2024, which most of us have, all of you, class action lawsuit. Woo! It goes on to say Congress can tax only for the common defense and general welfare. They did their research. Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution establishes Congress's power to lay and collect taxes only for the common defense and general welfare of the U.S. When taxes are collected and allocated for unlawful purposes, the general welfare is not served. Everyone take a screenshot of this. I'm trying to tell you, we can use this in other situations. Then we can get together and have a serious conversation about how to mobilize for healthcare. I really believe it. This is a big one. And I feel like this story kind of flew under the radar. I didn't see this story. Roger sent it to me. So thank you, Roger. But people need to know about this. And the complaint, the charging document in the lawsuit notes that $26.38 billion for which the defendants voted includes $3.5 billion for the procurement of advanced weapon systems defense articles, items or technical data designed for missile, satellite, or other military use and defense services, $1 billion for the production and development of artillery and critical munitions, and $4.4 billion to replenish defense articles and defense services provided to Israel. As the article goes to press, more than 4,500 Palestinian people have been killed by Israel's genocidal campaign using weapons provided by the U.S. government. So again, as we know, that number is higher. Notice that they're keeping that number under 50,000. At this point, it's probably 300,000 people, but they're keeping that number low on purpose. Yes. Joe gets it. So basically, they're breaking the law, assuming no one would notice this is big. Because a lot of us just don't have time to look up all these different laws, right? Like, especially we have people in this country that are working multiple jobs. And that's the thing. A lot of times people are too busy working or taking care of their kids, or they're just busy with life, or they're in school, etc., or they're in school and they're working. They don't have the time to take a step back and look up the laws that are in this country. And they know that. So they don't tell us these laws exist, but they're there. They're there. And so it just makes me wonder, could we use this in other situations? Could we have a class action lawsuit in other situations? You guys know I support reparations for descendants of slavery. Could we have a class action lawsuit? This is something, again, Nico House brought up. He said you can sue. So we need to have a bigger conversation about this. But I say, you guys, open your eyes to the possibilities that do exist. I didn't even know about that. A lot of people didn't know about the Leahy Law until now. So suing your Congress members, using your taxpayer dollars, hey, I'm all for that. All for it. Make sure you share this story because it's not getting a lot of news. I don't think a lot of people know about it. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.